Hey everybody, how y'all doing tonight? I know it's a little late. I like to get my recap videos up a little earlier than this most of the time, but things have been a little busy around here today, and this was just the earliest I could get it out. So, yeah, here it is. Day 3 is in the books, and the Seahawks actually did something of significance, and even though it was only that one thing, and I already made a video about it, and I already streamed about it, I wanted to make a follow-up video because this is no small thing, and I think this warrants a fair amount of discussion. The Seahawks bringing back Chris Carson on a 2-year deal is no small thing. He is going to play a significant role in the 2021 offense. He is going to factor in a pretty big way. So, look, I want to elaborate on one of my points of view when it comes to football and the way front offices work and the way in which decisions should be made. Because you guys know that one of my favorite sayings is the salary cap doesn't matter, or if you prefer, cap space is a myth, cap space is a meme, whatever. And I think some people haven't interpreted that to mean that you should just do whatever you want to do in free agency. You should sign every player. You should spend big bucks at every position because it doesn't matter. That's not what I mean. Manipulating the salary cap does come at a price. I don't mean to say, when I say that salary cap doesn't matter, I don't mean to say that manipulating the cap has no penalty. It does. It absolutely does. We are seeing some teams this very offseason pay very dearly for their cap manipulation in recent years. Steelers, Saints, Eagles, etc. So, here's what I mean when I say cap space is a myth. If your team, in our case the Seahawks, is in a position to do something that can put them over the top, acquire that one more free agent, that one extra pass rusher, that one extra receiver, whatever it may be, that one offensive lineman who patches a hole that you have. If your team is in a position to acquire a piece like that makes your team a legitimate Super Bowl contender that can make a deep playoff run, then you should do it. Whatever money might end up getting in your way, just do it because winning the Super Bowl is worth it. So when I say that salary cap doesn't matter when I'm talking about the Seahawks and that you can always create cap space and there are always tricks you can do, I mean that you should take advantage of the salary cap if you believe you can do that and make yourself a contender. So when I talk about the salary cap all the time, as you know that I am wont to do, I've actually had 1 or 2 comments recently kind of complaining about the fact that I frame everything in terms of what does it do for our salary cap. It's because while you can always create cap room, my thing is, what is it for? Are you creating cap space for a good reason? Is your manipulation of the cap that will come back to haunt you later worth it? Are you manipulating the cap in a way to get a player that puts you over the top? I don't want to do it just for any old player that we may not even need, who may not even help the team win. So when we're talking about Carson, and the reason why I'm a little concerned about this contract specifically is because, is this really the guy you want to bend the cap for? You don't want to bend the cap for maybe a superstar pass rusher or a superstar wide receiver to pair with Metcalf or something like that? I don't know. But let's take a look at this contract here real quick. So, as I already kind of went over in the stream and in the video I posted earlier today, the contract situation with Carson is a little irregular. Tom Pelissero reported that he signed for a 2-year deal worth up to $14.62 million, and Adam Schefter reported that Carson's deal was actually 1 year and $10 million bigger. So what this means, as you can see, Schefter includes in his tweet that the deal voids after 2 years, and this is something that was kind of foreign to me, but it's become a very popular technique to manipulate the salary cap this offseason because the cap went down. So Let's talk about what this means. What does it mean that Chris Carson is on a 3-year deal that voids after 2 years? In order to answer this question, let's take a look at another contract very similar to the one we just gave Carson that actually has the details released. Dalvin Tomlinson with the Vikings. So this article details the full contract for Dalvin Tomlinson with the Vikings. So basically, they have lowered Tomlinson's cap hit during the contract by borrowing from the future. So let's take a look at this tweet. Dalvin Tomlinson's contract details with the Vikings per source. 2 years, $21 million with almost all of it guaranteed. Signing bonus, most of the contract. So let's take a look at these cap hits for the 2 years of the contract. $6 million, $7.5 million. But that leaves a decent chunk of money out because the deal was for $21 million. So how can the combined cap hit across 2 years be only 13.5? And that's where the void year comes in. There are void years at the end of the contract that will result in guaranteed dead money charges after the contract expires. So there will be a $7.5 million dead money charge in 2023 after Tomlinson is off the roster. So basically, instead of paying or being charged $21 million for Dalvin Tomlinson over the next 2 years, they've decided to kick a good chunk of that money into a third year, which is kind of interesting because Dalvin Tomlinson is not going to be on the Vikings in 2 years. He's going to hit free agency in 2 years. So basically, they're guaranteed to be paying $7.5 million in dead money to him in 2023. So that's what the Chris Carson thing is. We're basically taking some of that cap hit and kicking it into 2023, even though we're already committing to not having him. So we are basically committing ourselves to a dead money charge with Carson, even though we know he's not going to be on the team. It's almost like we have a gentleman's agreement to release him from a 3-year deal after 2 years, where we promise that we will cut him. And that is something that this team has actually not done before with John Schneider. It's something that teams do sometimes, but Schneider has avoided it. So my question is Chris Carson really the guy that you want to do this for? Is Chris Carson the difference between maybe going one and done and making the Super Bowl? Is he the difference between a divisional round exit and winning the Super Bowl? I'm not convinced. Not in this system. I think he has value, but I don't know how much value he has in this new Shane Waldron offense. I don't know how much value he has just by virtue of the fact that he's an injury-prone running back. I don't know if he's going to give us that much that we couldn't have gotten out of Penny, Collins, and a rookie. But that's obviously arguable. So the thing that interests me is that we decided that Carson was the guy that was worth kind of breaking our unwritten rule for. This was clearly something we were not comfortable doing, and it's not a great way of doing business. It's something that teams get kind of forced to do because of the cap going down this year. So it's very interesting that we pick this moment to do it. Not for an elite pass rusher who can help our pass rush starved defense, not for a star cornerback to help our secondary, but for a running back who gets injured every year. I'm sorry, but he does. Now, the question that I have is, what is this dead cap hit? What is it? Is it going to be less than $2 million, $3 million? Because if that's the case, that's going to be about 1% of the salary cap by 2023, because the cap is going to go up. It may go up to close to $250 million by then. And if that's the case, if the cap hit is somewhere around 2 to 3 million, 1% of the cap, obviously, I'm more than happy to live with that. That is not a big deal. However, if you take a look at the way the contract is worded, we can see here that the 2-year deal is worth 14.6 and the 3-year deal is worth 24.6. So does that mean the dead money charge is actually going to be 10 million? That's more than 4% of the cap. That's a much bigger deal. If that's the case, then I kind of have a problem here, because this is a big charge to our future selves that I just don't think does it for us today. So that's really all I can say about the contract stuff. We'll know more in coming days when the team actually releases details, and when they do, I will comment on it. Now, let's take a look at the way Chris Carson plays and try to figure out where he might fit into a Shane Waldron offense. So I went to look up some advanced statistics on Chris Carson versus some other running backs in the NFL, specifically the running backs that Shane Waldron has had to work with. And I understand Shane Waldron was a passing game coordinator. Shane Waldron was not really doing anything with the run game while he was with the Rams. However, we did hire a run game coordinator from the Rams as well this offseason. And either way you slice it, Shane Waldron is sort of a McVay disciple. So we should be able to learn something from the way in which the Rams conducted their business in recent years. So if you take a look at Chris Carson in 2020 and you take a look at his rush locations over this season, he ran inside 65% of the time and he ran to the outside about 35% of the time. Now, we know that Chris Carson is a power back who likes to run people over. So my initial impression was that the Rams running backs, because the Rams use a bit more of an outside zone rushing attack, probably run to the outside a lot more. So I went to look up the three main running backs for the Rams last year, and the results actually kind of surprised me. If you go to Cam Akers, who became the lead running back by the end of the season for the Rams, he ran to the outside only slightly more than Chris Carson, about 36% of the time. So not a big difference here at all. And if you go to Darrell Henderson, another top running back for the Rams last season, you can see that the number is, by a decent amount, larger, 44.4%. Almost half of his runs were to the outside. It's still not a massive difference. And then I did Malcolm Brown just for the sake of completionism, and I got 35% of his runs going to the outside. So these findings actually kind of surprised me. It doesn't seem like that these players, these Rams running backs over 2020, were playing all that differently in terms of the broad sense of running to the inside versus running to the outside. And furthermore, if you take a look at Chris Carson's broken tackle rate of 15%, you can see it's not radically different from Cam Akers' 13% or Malcolm Brown's 14%. Darrell Taylor's broken tackle rate was closer to the bottom of the league at 10, but this doesn't seem like a big enough difference to really warrant that much of a fuss. And I have to admit that these findings kind of made me reconsider where I'm feeling about Chris Carson fitting in the Shane Waldron offense. So I decided to do a little further digging, and I decided to take a look at the average yards before contact for each relevant player. First Chris Carson, and then Rams running backs while Shane Waldron has been involved. So here on Pro Football Reference, you can see how many yards per carry on average a running back gained before being contacted, which is to say, regardless of whether or not they broke a tackle, regardless of whether or not they fell forward for an extra 2 yards, this is how many yards they had before contact. Chris Carson in 2018 had 2.3 yards a carry. The next year, a 1.8, which is very low. And the next year, you had 2.7. Now, once again, Chris Carson is known as a power back who likes to run up the gut and run people over. So the logical assumption would be that he's getting hit earlier than other running backs, particularly players in the Rams scheme who are running that zone outside scheme that is more geared around not being contacted until you're further down the field. Basically less broken tackles, but still equal production. So let's take a look at Cam Akers and see what his yards before contact were. He's only been here for one season, and you actually see that his yards per contact are rather low. Yards before contact are quite low, 2.2 yards. That's overall not different, and if anything, it's a little lower than Carson has been over his career in Seattle. So one way or the other, Cam Akers was getting contacted no later than Carson was on his runs, and he was still able to be quite productive. Now let's go to Darrell Henderson. Take a look at his yards before contact. 2.2 in 2019. Okay, that's basically Carson territory. 2.5 in 2020. Once again, Carson territory. So maybe there isn't as big of a difference between these types of running backs and their styles as I'm thinking. Finally, I did Malcolm Brown. Once again, we're not seeing anything too radical here. 2.8 yards in 2018, 1.6 in 2019, and then in 2020, 2.7. These differences may be present in a couple areas, but they are not huge. So this has forced me to reevaluate how I feel about Chris Carson's potential fit in a Shane Waldron offense. And just for the sake of uncovering every stone, I decided to go back to Todd Gurley in 2018 and 2019. And once again, I found no real strong indication that there was any sort of difference in play style, at least to a huge degree, in the Rams running backs and Chris Carson. 2.5 in 2018 when he was an All-Pro, in 2019, 2.2. That's not to say these players play exactly the same. We know that's not true, but we're not seeing any indication that the Rams over the last 3 years have had any problem with running backs being contacted close to the line of scrimmage. So my conclusion from all of this, and kind of the takeaway, is that maybe my assumptions about Chris Carson and his fit in a Shane Waldron offense need to be evaluated. I still don't think he has the vision of a guy like Rashad Penny, and I still don't think that his assets are as valued in the Shane Waldron offense, but it might not be as big of a deal as I was thinking. So with that optimistic note, I will go ahead and end the video. I'm not really a big fan of this signing. I am curious to see what the cap hit is going to be. I've been told it's 5.5 this year, in which case it's fine, kinda, sorta, okay, whatever, I guess. But what does it mean down the road for this team? And that's all I got. I'm going to get out of here. Peace out. Go Hawks. We will be doing streams tomorrow to continue to keep an eye on all this and try to see what our next moves might be. But that's my thought on Chris Carson. See y'all later.